Hello everybody and welcome back. It's your art teacher, Mr. Guera, and today I want to start things off with a question. Do you have a favorite blanket? One that you like to wrap around yourself as a superhero cape or snuggle up in when it's cold? Recently, I got this one. I mean, this is more than just a blanket. Look at this beautiful work of art. The lines, the patterns, the colors. I love it because it's like a special kind of blanket that you wear and a work of art at the same time. And you know who else loves to wear blankets? Why, it's Serape Swift. He's a huge fan of all things woven. Baskets, scarves, shoes, and yes, serapes. In fact, you see those weaving needles he's holding? He uses them to weave serapes to give to others who are in need. And that's why his classifications are object, because he loves wearing serapes, and knowledge, because he actually knows how to make them. And wouldn't you know, that brings us to our art lesson, making a serape. For this project, you will need a sheet of paper, paper towel, a paintbrush, a paint palette, a water container, scissors, paint, and don't forget to lay something down onto your work surface to protect it from paint. For this project, I'm going to be using newspaper. You can find a link for all of these art supplies in the description below. Now that we've got all of our supplies out, we're ready to get started. But first, weaving is the act of creating fabric by interlacing two or more threads called a warp and a weft. By hand, there are a few different types of weaving, like knitting, crocheting, felting, braiding, or plaiting. There are also devices called looms, which can produce fabric on a larger scale. Looms themselves have been around for a very long time and go way back to about 4000 BC. Making this an art form that is literally woven throughout history. And speaking of woven, that brings us to Serape Swift's first special ability, Covert Crash. When he wraps up in a serape, he can leap higher and pounce down harder. Alright, so with your paper landscape on top of your surface, that means the longest sides are on the top and the bottom. We're going to go ahead and get started with our paints. I have a black paint, I've got a white, and I chose blue because that matches my paper. I think it really helps our serape designs and lines pop if you use the same color paint with the same color paper. But no matter what color paper you're using, you can use any color of paint and still make a wonderful looking serape. Okay, so let's pop the caps on these and put just a little dab of paint inside our palette. I like to say just a little bit bigger than the size of an M&M, the big M&Ms. Okay, so, I put a little bit of extra white in there, but that's okay. Accidents happen all the time. No fuss, no muss. We've got our surface covered with newspaper. We're good. A little bit of black, and we're ready to start. Now, the most important part about the paintbrush as far as this project goes is that if you want to make thin lines, you should hold the paintbrush pretty much straight up and down, just using the very edge, the very tip of the bristles on the paintbrush to paint a line. But if you want thick lines, hold it at an angle and drag the paintbrush down at its widest point. All right, so I want you to take your paintbrush and just lightly dab the bristles into your color paint, not the black, not the white, but if you're matching paint color with paper color, get that color first. We're going to start with some thin lines. So I want to leave this section here open for fringe. So I don't want to paint too close to the edge at all because we have to get these edges cut with fringe. We'll be doing that a little bit later, but for right now, I want a vertical line. That means a line that goes up and down just as thin as you can make it. It doesn't have to be a perfectly straight line. Just go ahead and drag that line down. Make sure that the paint is touching the top of the paper all the way down to the bottom. Now that you've done that, we're going to make the exact same line on the other side, remembering to leave some space on the right side for fringe. So here we go. I'm holding the paintbrush straight up and down, dragging it slowly. Ah, nice. And we're just beginning. We're starting with these two thin lines as our first pattern. We're going to go with the middle now, so I'm going to reload up on my blue paint. Nice. And this time, what I want to do is I want to make a nice wavy line using a very thick brush stroke. So I'm turning the paintbrush ever so slightly, and I'm just dragging it so that the widest side of the paintbrush bristles are touching the paper. Now, sometimes you run out of paint as you're dragging the paintbrush along your paper. So if that happens, easy enough, just reload. We gave ourselves the correct amount of paint, making sure that we're not going to waste anything. And remember, anytime that we're going to do a line today for this serape, we're going to try to do two of them. So I've got one wavy line on the left, and it's in between the two thin lines that we started with. So now it's time to do a second wavy line on the right. Oh, this is looking great. And of course, you don't want to have any missing spaces in your wavy line or any of your lines really. So don't be afraid to add a little bit of extra paint on your paintbrush and make this artwork pop. Make those lines complete. Wonderful. All right, so I think we're done with the blue for now. I'm going to grab my water container and I'm going to just drag the bristles of my paintbrush on the bottom of the cup. That's going to evenly get all of the paint off the brush and keep it nice and clean so that we don't accidentally mix colors on our next application. You also want to have a piece of paper towel handy to dry off those bristles so you give yourself a nice dry brush to dip into black, which is what we're going to be using next. Now we're going to do the same thing. With your black paint, or whatever color you might be using this time around, I want you to practice again, dragging the brush on its edge with a vertical line that starts from the top, goes all the way to the bottom, making sure that the line touches the top of the paper and the bottom of the paper. It's always okay if it gets on your newspaper or whatever you're covering up your surface with. It's the whole reason why we put it there. And just make sure that these lines look fantastic. Okay, now it's time to put the very center line on your serape. Let's try a zigzag line, and we're going to drag our brush with these short diagonal lines and go from the bottom this time all the way up to the top, right in the center between your wavy lines with your black. Make sure you're taking the time you need to make that line nice and thick, and as always, make sure that line touches both the bottom of the paper where you start and the top where you finish. Let's keep using this black paint, and I really do like the way this thick line works, so how about a dashed line that goes vertically up the paper? That's a different kind of line. We've done thin, we've done wavy, zigzag, dashed looks great too. So right in between the wavy line and those two thin lines on the outer edges of your serape, let's put a dashed line. And just like we did with the blue paint, we need to clean our brush before we use the white paint. So I'm going to drag my brush along the bottom of my water container. And look, it's making the water kind of a dark bluish gray color. I love mixing paint colors while I'm cleaning my paintbrush. It makes the water turn into cool colors. Don't forget to clean it off using the paper towel. Now before we continue, it's time for another fun fact. Alrighty, it's time to talk about this lesson's featured artist. Her name is Daisy Togglechi. She was known as one of the world's most famous Native American weavers. Her weaving style was so prolific that her creations are considered tapestries. A tapestry is when a woven work is so well done that instead of being a rug or something to wear, it is regarded as a work of art to be admired for its incredible quality. Daisy Togglechi's amazing tapestries and beautiful works of woven wonder were so highly regarded that they've been placed on a United States postal stamp. Creating tapestries takes a long time, and that's why Serape Swift's second special ability is called Slow Poke.
Once poked with his sewing needle, opponents suddenly find themselves moving in slow motion.
It's now time to use our white paint, and I think to help our serapes look as though they are actually woven instead of sheets of paper that are painted on, let's add some more very thin dashed lines. We're going to start by outlining the heavy, thick stroke, that black zigzag right in the middle. We're going to outline that on either side with some very thin white dashed lines. And then I'm going to find a spot in between the thick dashed black lines and the thin black line and put a dashed white line in between those. You've probably already noticed that I've put the video in fast forward motion, so always remember that if you need more time or you need me to slow down, hit that pause button. Give yourself the opportunity to catch up, and then once you're caught up with the video, hit play again. I think my serape needs 2 more wavy lines, so I'm going to dip my brush in the white paint and put those wavy lines on nice and thick right next to my thick blue wavy lines. And of course, once I'm done, it is time once again to clean my brush. I got to get this white paint off these bristles by dragging the brush back and forth along the bottom of my water container. And of course, be sure to dry that brush off using your paper towel. Nice. Now that we're all done with the painting part of this project, let's go ahead and let our serapes dry because it's time for our third fun fact. Serapes are among the finest woven fabrics created in the Americas. They're known for their durability and usefulness. They're used by both men and women, boys and girls, to keep themselves warm when it's cold, for cover when it rains, or as a cozy blanket. Serapes are also ideal for life on horseback, which is why artists often paint cowboys wearing these colorful garments.
Serape Swift's third special ability is called pinpoint precision. That's because he can fling his weaving needles at opponents with uncanny accuracy.
Now that your serape painting is dry, it's time to make fringe. Get out your scissors and let's cut into the sides of our serape paper at about the length of your pointer finger on both sides. Space them apart as evenly as you can and voila, you've got fringe. And there you have it. Your serape is officially done. Great job. We certainly have blanketed the topic of serapes pretty well, and we also wove in a couple of fun facts along with making our magnificent masterpieces. I hope you had fun, and I want to thank you so much for spending this time with me. I've been Mr. Guera, and I will see you next time. Bye. Suddenly sensing that serapes are super sweet? Well, check out Mr. Guera Reads The Serape, a story by Wayne Lopez. Link in the description below.
Want to weave in even more knowledge about Serape Swift? Don't forget to download your character sheet. Link in the description below.